Welcome, one and all, to another Cultivate Wins webinar. We're talking books, and I like to get geeky about books, but my favorite part of this webinar is each one of us is going to give 3 book recommendations. So I'm more here to grab about 9 book recommendations than I am to give 3 book recommendations. And anybody, you guys can't see my desk, and I don't want to move my computer around and stuff like that, but if you could see how many books are on my desk right now, it's pretty ridiculous. They're a big part of who I am and a big part of my life. And they've absolutely changed my life. And so what I did very simply is I asked the 4 of us to get together, each come with 3 book recommendations. I don't care if they're business. I don't care if they're personal. I don't care if they're spiritual. I can care less what they're about. Something that has made an impact for you that you'd like to share with others. But I did ask if we could start with one question besides the books. And that is, and the answer may be no for some. I don't know. We have not discussed this. Is there a criteria that you have that helps you determine how you choose your books, whether you read a book or not? Do you have some type of criteria or of way of deciding whether you want to read a book or not? Karen?
So, simple answer, no. I really don't have anything that I'm super purposeful about. I think, though, that we don't choose books. I think they choose us.
Okay.
And I'm a big one for, what are other people reading? Okay. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. Okay. I do look at, if it's a book that is newer to me or that someone hasn't recommended, I'll look at the ratings and read some of the mediocre reviews. I don't really put stock in the 5 stars or the 1 stars. I like the 3 and 4 stars just to kind of see. But otherwise, no. I kind of, my experiences, they've just kind of found me.
Found you. Okay. Yeah. Nicole.
Kind of similar to Karen. I don't really necessarily have specific criteria, but I do find that I tend to be drawn to books that are in a certain area of my life that I am working on or need to be working on. And it's kind of in the same vein as books finding me. Like the 3 books that I am going to be talking about are very different, but at the same time, they're not, and they all kind of do tie together. I do get a lot of recommendations from, what my peers, other people in the industry, people that I respect and all of that. I also love reading the mediocre reviews as well. But at the end of the day, the books that I actually do end up reading and finding the most value in are always seem to be around a similar topic of something that I'm trying to improve on myself or need to improve in myself.
Okay. What about you, Chrissy?
Actually, it's not a criteria either. It was hard for me to pick a specific criteria, and I realized I don't have such a criteria, but I do have a routine before I pick up a book and then read it. So one of the routine is, of course, I research about the book. So I check the reviews as well. And so somehow I'm more drawn to reviews that are made by ordinary people, not critics, because I can relate to them more. So I check the reviews, I check the writer of the book. And one of the important things that I check in the research is the context of the book. Like, the things that I see on the back are very impactful for me because I get to understand if that's the right book for me at the right moment. Because there are books I want to read and then I pick it up and I realize it's not the one for me yet, maybe somewhere along the way. And then another routine would be I always check out the way of writing, maybe because I have a background in journalism. The way of writing is very important for me. If the book and the writer doesn't speak to me, I need to take a break from it. So sometimes I jump from one book to another, and sometimes I don't. I just realized while choosing the book recommendations, there are books I haven't picked up when I left it there. So the way of writing is a really, really big thing for me.
Okay. So, and I know Chrissy knows my criteria. I do have 2 criteria. Is I am looking for books. Now, my wife and I, totally adorable because she wants stories, novels, everything else like that. She thinks that I would just have 10 times more fun than she ever has with the story and novel with a textbook. I love to learn, grow, and all that other kind of stuff. But here's my criteria. Whatever I'm going to learn and grow from, it has to share core concepts and principles that are just as likely to make me a better husband as they are to make me a better whatever the book is about. The core concepts and principles better be so strong that they're just as likely to make me a better husband or a better human as they are to make me a better business owner or leader or whatever. That's the type of core concepts and principles that really resonate with me. So that's what I'm looking for in books. And it's kind of a non-negotiable to me. That's very, very important to me. The main thought process that I have is, number one, I'm not looking for more books to read. I'm looking for books that I can read to help me determine if I want to reread it. I'm not looking for books to read. I'm looking for books to add to my library that I want to reread. That's really what I'm looking for. I don't care about reading a book. I care about finding that book to determine if it makes my reread list. I'm looking for the reread list, not the read list. So the second criteria is this, and I just have to admit it, and that is industry specific. It's either going to, it's about core concepts and principles that make me just as good of a husband as it does a business owner. But then also, I believe to really play your role in your industry, you have to be aware of what is the literature that other people are reading. Simply because if you are not up to date on those things, you are losing an opportunity to understand and properly communicate because you're not speaking the same language. You don't know the language. You do have to stay on top of your industry. And if everyone in the industry is reading a book that I don't care for, I still have to have that context. So that is a criteria. It's not one that I love, but it is one that I believe in because I claim to be a professional. Then you got to be willing to put in the work. So those are kind of my two criteria. So Karen, what's your first book?
So my first book is Fierce Conversations.
All right.
Probably, I wouldn't be surprised if it's on all of our lists. For me, this book is not so much about having fierce conversations and how to have hard conversations, as much as it is just how to have better conversations with all of your conversations.
Yep.
Whether they're business or personal, whether they're sensitive topics or not. I think there's so much that we can learn from this book and implement in our day-to-day lives. So I am a super high SC on the disc, like off the chart SC. My D and I are opposite. So I'm like a teeter-totter. So when I was the assistant team leader at Keller Williams in particular, I did have to sometimes have harder conversations with agents, harder conversations for me, being the SC, right? Yep. Can we all just get along? I do not care for conflict or confrontation. Can we all just hug it out and be good? But that's not always productive. Yeah. And sometimes agents in particular need to hear not the fluffy stuff. Yep. And that wasn't something that came natural to me. And I needed to learn how to have those conversations in an authentic way to me. Yep. And this book gave me tools to do that. Like I said, in a way that was authentically me. So it wasn't me becoming someone else to have, a little bit harder conversations. But so some of the key points of the book that really stick out with me is principle number 2, come out from behind yourself and into the conversation. And to me, that means checking my emotions at the door, coming in, really being present for the conversation and participating in the conversation and really being a great listener. That one is huge for me. And then the one that I hang on to almost every day is the beach ball analogy that she uses in the book.
Yep.
in that if you imagine a beach ball with all of its colors, no one color is right and one color is wrong. They're just colors on the ball.
Yep.
And that's how people come to conversations, is from their, and each color is like their unique perspective in their life experience. And everyone is right and correct from their own perspective or their own color of the beach ball. And we all have to realize that in order to have great conversations.
Yep.
So I'm super visual, and that one just stays in my head always, to provide perspective.
Yeah. And she does a great job at just formalizing, just helping give you a formula of how that conversation should be built and how it could happen and flow. I love that she really does systematize it in a wonderful way.
Yep.
All right, Nicole.
All right. Well, no spoilers or anything, but my first book is not Fierce Conversations, but my first book is How to Do the Work by Dr. Nicole LePera.
Okay. I have not read that one. Talk to me.
I have mentioned before, I'm a big proponent of therapy and mental health. This is not a business book. This is very much it's a journey towards self-healing and reparenting yourself. All of us have had things that have happened in our childhood that have shaped who we are today, for better or for worse. It's just a fact of life.
Yep.
And this book is about giving you the tools and the practice of how to really self-heal and learn how to overcome anything that happened in your life that might be holding you back from anything that you might want to do. Whether it's something like, you can't keep simple promises to yourself, like I want to exercise on a regular basis, or I want to eat healthy. Everything like that, from some of the actual physical response that our body has to trauma and things that have happened in our lives. Like, she goes into the science behind how if you have unresolved trauma in your body, you are not able to adequately absorb nutrition in the food that you're eating. And she goes into the science behind that and gives you a practical way to help you overcome and heal yourself to overcome that. This book has actually changed my life. It's one that I definitely, it is on my reread list. And I think it's something that everybody really could benefit from, in terms of just how to be the best version of ourselves, and also how not to become victims of our circumstances or of anything that has happened, but just to accept it for what it is and to move on and to truly live our best, most authentic selves. So I highly, highly recommend it. I think it is a book that will allow, if you take this and you put it into practice, you will be a better human. You will be a better spouse. You will be a better person.
Okay, so I forgot to mention when we started is thank you, Chrissy. Chrissy is actually going to put together a graphic with all of our book recommendations. That's why I'm not writing them down, because I know Fierce Conversations, what you just mentioned, is a totally new book to me. Hardcore, I want that book now. So I didn't write it down because I know Chrissy's got our back on this one. So we'll all get the list of books, but that's one that is new to me. So I'm excited about that. Chrissy, what's yours?
I will ask the full title and the author, so I don't get it wrong when I create the graphics.
Okay, all three of us will send those to you.
Thank you. Well,
sure.
To give you context, I think if we have another double date, Dina, you, Pao, and me, I would be more Dina and I would have more books to talk about, because I love novels and stories more, and fictions more. But for this purpose, I wanted to share more relatable, like more in context types of book recommendations. And I'm gonna disappoint you because this is not something new. I'm gonna start with why. And I'm gonna snatch it from you because you might give it as a book recommendation. I don't know. But you've heard David talk about it a lot of times, and it's always in his book recommendations and book rereads. I'm not sure if it's in the yearly or the quarterly, but he's already said a lot. So I'm just gonna give some insights on my perspective. Number one, I just love how Simon Sinek was able to have the courage to talk about the truth. It's like a real talk kind of book where he just breaks the realities of the industry. and just says all of the hard stuff that needs to be said. And that takes courage,
Hmm,
because some people might really get
that's well
angry at
said.
him. And it was said in a way that you won't have arguments towards him, because he said it in the sense that it makes sense,
Yeah.
or something in that sense. So another thing about it is, the second time I read it, I reread it this week actually. It totally struck me as a marketing book.
Hmm.
So teaching marketing, like the strategies he mentioned, the realities of the industry, and the manipulation of so many companies right now, because it's so commercialized nowadays, and the way that he's explained how big companies are manipulating the people through negative emotions and stuff, and saying that it's not sustainable. That struck me as a marketing person, because I am guilty of doing some of those things, and I realized that I needed to push through and go beyond. And the interesting thing about it was, when I first read the book, it struck me as a personal one, like appreciating the why, like understanding the values of the company before diving in and committing to it. So David and I had a conversation in our Thursday meeting, and I said, I love that the book has different perspective, even if you're only one person who reads it multiple times. So
Yeah.
depending on where you are, it might have a different impact on you. And the way that Simon Sinek explained the stories, it was very relatable. He used very familiar examples, and I love that about him. As I've mentioned in one of my routines, I do some research, and I appreciate Simon Sinek as a person and as a teacher and as a leader. And
Yeah.
reading his book was very, very, very fun for me. So one last thing, one of the um, one of the things I consider as well when I read a book is continuity. And this is a gift from Jeannie actually. So the Find Your Why book, it's in
Yeah.
my to read list, and I love that it has like a follow up. So that has an impact on me as well.
Yeah, we can definitely talk about that book, because I've got that one sitting back here as well. Yeah, and you pointed out something that's very important to me, and I'll bring it up with my first book too. Is you've read it multiple times. You just got done with it on your second time, and you totally got something different out of it the second time than you did the first time. And I think that's important. Sometimes we don't notice certain things, but also sometimes we're a different human that read it this time than when we did
Yep.
3 years from now. So there's a lot of reasons why we catch different things at different times. That's important to me. That's why I'm looking for the books on the reread, because I assume if it's that good, it will probably remain that good 5 years from now, 10 years from now, because I'm still changing and this stays constant. So there it is. Greatest salesman in the world. There's no way that that's not going to be number one for me. I literally blame this book for my marriage. I blame this book for the greatest marriage I've ever seen. I'll just tell you right now is when I was introduced to this book, it was from a sales context. And I read it, and that confused me. And I don't think that is most people's reactions. I think most people, they read it and they look at the 10 principles that are in here. And because it was brought to them in a sales context, they take those 10 principles and they apply them to their salesmanship, their sales skills, everything else like that. It didn't, I think I was in a different place when they introduced this to me. That's why I say, like, I can keep reading it and you're always in different places. I just happened to grab the book when I was 19 years old, when all I could think about was marriage. Okay. I was dating my high school sweetheart since we were 15. I got married when I was about 20. So I'm engaged at this point, just waiting for my marriage to happen. And here is basically what I found out of it is this. Those are the 10 scrolls. I will form good habits and become their slaves. I was thinking of that in context of my marriage and my relationship. I will greet each day with love in my heart. I mean, I can start reading these and go, what does this got to do with sales? All I could think about were these 10 principles applied to my marriage. And I was hooked on these 10 principles for the rest of my life. And I still am, and I'm 51 this year. For anybody who's not familiar with this book, the one thing I do want to put in context, you could take these 10 principles and apply them to sales or anything else that you want. I've applied them to my personal life and my professional life, but the salesman part of the title is a misnomer. This is not a sales book. It is the key character of the story happens for a career, happens to be a salesman. That's why it's called The Greatest Salesman, is because that's the key character's actual occupation. But it's a love story, because in his culture, he wanted to ask for this woman's hand in marriage. Again, where was my head at the time? He wanted to ask for this woman's hand in marriage. And to do that in that culture, he had to show her father that he could actually provide for her. And how are you going to do that? And he said, nothing means more to me than that marriage. And I have to figure out how to provide for her. And how he happened to provide for her was becoming a salesman. So this isn't even about him wanting to be a great salesman because he wants to be a great salesman. He wants to be a great salesman because he wants the girl. Ding, 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 ding. Okay, that was me at 19 years old all day long. So I took these 10 principles, and this is still my favorite marriage book that's ever existed, but it helps me in every other aspect of my life: parenting, leadership in my company, how I coach, everything that I do. This is kind of where I start. So that is my number one book. And that's kind of not only what it's about a little bit, but what actually triggered me to be interested in this book. I just happened to be in a little different space in my world when I picked up that book. I think then when the average person picked up that book, all I could think about was the girl. So that still runs through this like nobody's business. That's my gig. So that's my number one book for every purpose. So anyways, Karen.
Awesome. So my number two recommendation is the 12-week year.
Yes.
Get more done in 12 weeks than others do in 12 months. Yes. So I love this book because it chunks down what a lot of people typically would think when they're goal setting and business planning, or even New Year's resolutions for ourselves and our families. You set these big goals that you want to achieve in the year, and you go gangbusters the first couple of weeks, and then the novelty starts to wear off, and you think, I've got time, I've got plenty of time, I've got till the end of the year, I'm good. And you just become complacent. And then all of a sudden November, December come, and you're pedal to the metal and you're going gangbusters again. And in the meantime, you've lost all this time in the middle, where you could have been taking advantage of that time and maximizing those days and hours to accomplish whatever it is. So I just love taking it down to 12 weeks and being really purposeful with those 12 weeks. It allows you for, and it kind of requires you to be very clear, very consistent, very systematic, and measuring and holding yourself or others accountable. And I just love it. I'm all about being super purposeful. And for me, this just resonates because it really doesn't give you an option to not be productive. You don't have the time to let off the gas.
Have you gotten that?
No.
Your planner.
So those that are into this book, in the book, it does talk about the 12-week year planner. And I think there's a lot of I'm huge into the 12-week year, and there's a lot of great things in there. But to try to put those sheets that they talk together about doing your points and all this other kind of stuff in there, they already have that all drawn out there. So anybody who is into this book and agrees that they love it like Karen does, I will say, your bonus book for this one, for this number two,
Must-have book.
would end up being this here. They really do a good job with their actual planner, assuming you're going through that system.
Yeah, I like to even simplify it more than that. So what I use is just a 1-3-5
Yep.
quarterly.
Yep.
So for those who don't know what that is, it's the 1 goal, the 3 objectives, and the 5 strategies for each objective. Yep. And it really becomes your must-do list. Yep. To get you through. And I do that quarterly. So, yep. And we do it for our team as well.
I take this as a great mindset, and then I simplify it. I do have some teams out there that want to implement the entire program. Don't try to do that on your own. Oh my gosh, it's intense. Just cheat, and they've already done it for you. Okay, Nicole.
Awesome. Well, my second book is Fierce Conversations. Yeah, Fierce Conversations, the same as Karen's first.
Fierce Conversations.
So, yes. So, not to beat a dead horse, because I think Karen did a really good job of providing a synopsis. But to me, the quote that I think about every single day that sticks out to me in Fierce Conversations is, the conversation is the relationship.
Yep.
The conversation is the relationship. Yep. And so when you take that and you put that in context of your entire life, your clients, your parents, your family, your spouse, the type of conversations that you are having, the quality of conversations that you're having is determining the quality of your relationship. And I think, what's interesting to me is like reading, you can read both of these kind of hand in hand, how to do their work and how to have, a fierce conversation. Because I think they both kind of apply to each other. And in how to do the work, you might have covered that in order to self-heal, in order to overcome some of these things that have happened, you maybe need to have a fierce conversation with somebody in your life, or even with yourself, about what happened, right? About what you need to do to overcome. And I love that it gives you the practical application, like the model that you can follow. The confrontation model in Fierce Conversations has been invaluable to me in my personal and in my business life, because especially like I was also, not as much anymore, but a SC on the disc, especially as an admin before I started my business. I was always fearful of any kind of confrontation with my boss, even if it's something like asking for a raise or asking for time off or anything like that. I never was confident in being able to do that. And just being able to kind of outline the steps, and again, remembering the conversation is the relationship, and it's not really a confrontation with another person. It's having a conversation with another person and confronting the issue. This is the issue. And talk about taking that and applying it to your marriage, and how that completely changes the game regarding that level of communication that you have. And it just massively can improve all relationships in your life. So I reference this book all the time. If I need to have a conversation with a team member, with a client that's not going well, with a family member, massively useful book.
Love it. Hard not to recommend that book.
Yeah,
it's a good one. Chrissy.
My second book is actually more of a representation, but it's his 5 Loves by Jason Everett. It's a story about St. John Paul II. So it's actually quite Catholic. So it represents more of the spiritual side. Like whatever your religion is, I think there's value in digging deeper into that. And whenever I choose books to read, I actually want to alternate it a bit. So something heavy in the industry or something heavy about work. And then I need to read a novel because it was so overwhelming with the information. And then one of the in-betweens, books that I really want to read are true to life stories. So this is an example of, this is one of the books that was written about St. John Paul II. And it was actually through interviews with people around him. So bishops, archbishops, his assistants, and people close to him, his family. And then Jason Everett did a really, really great job in painting out the 5 loves of St. John Paul II. And one of the things that makes a book, like linger in my life is the impact it has while I was reading it. And just to share and show you how much impact it had, there was one excerpt in this book that says one of the five loves of Saint John Paul II is the body of Christ, and Jason Everett did a great job at painting the actual thing that was happening. Saint John Paul II was in his adoration time, and there was people with him. There were people with him, and in the perspective and the like, the experience of the people with Saint John Paul II was like incredible in a sense that this is how they explained it. We were just looking at Saint John Paul II, and then an hour has passed. That's how immersed Saint John Paul II was while he was adoring the body of Christ. And the way that they explained it, the way that I was transferred in that specific moment, it like spoke to not just my mind but also my heart. And I cried for half an hour. I couldn't continue reading and I was crying because it spoke to my soul. So I think books that I want to recommend would be books that you have connection with, not just in the mind but also in the soul. And I also love reading stories of other people and journeying through their life. So actually, two other books that were in the race for my book recommendation was Hiding Place by Corey Ten Boom. It was the story of a girl and and her experience during the Nazi time. And then another one is Life Without Limits by Nick Vujicic, I think was his last name. I can't pronounce it properly, but those are two stories that talks about real life and how they just went through with their experiences. And it inspires me because I'm a normal person and they're normal people, but they were able to do extraordinary things.
Yeah. Okay. The line that I heard you say that is lingering with me is you said a book that lingers in my life. Ooh, I like that phrase. I like that phrase. That's a good one. That's a good one. All right. So no surprise on my next one either. The last one, I will try not to give one of my typical answers, but it is going to be The Four Agreements. I'm telling you, I am simple. I am predictable. I am consistent, whatever you want to call it. Those 10 scrolls have been my biggest foundation since 19. I always go back to those 10 scrolls from The Greatest Salesman in the World. But these four, when these came up, I cannot believe how someone summarized so much in four little points. I just find what he was able to summarize in 4 points, pure magic. The last thing that I'll say about this book, because I won't go through all 4 points, are on the screen if anybody wants them. The graphics are available as well. Is this? This is on my reread list every single quarter, but I only reread those middle 4 chapters. This is not my favorite book from front to back. This book took me 18 months to get through, and it should have taken me, less than a day to get through. But I kept starting it in the first third of the book. Oh, I couldn't stand it. Okay. I do get why now I have to read the first third and the last third, because they really introduce a lot of verbiage here that he didn't have to write these middle sections the way that he did with the verbiage that he did, and he could have gotten his point across. But if you read it without, and you skip those intros and everything, you won't understand the language that he's using. Could have chosen different language and made the book about a third this size, but I'm telling you, those 4 points, what he did in those 4 points, it is, to me, it is literally pure magic. It is just absolutely pure magic. And I usually always, Chrissy made this graphic for me because I used to have a very ugly looking version of this. And so she made it easier for me to read and prettier. And I keep this graphic on my phone. I keep it on my computer. I keep it everywhere. It's a great reference point to really simplify life for me. So that's what those 10 scrolls do. And that's what these 4 points do. So this book I would highly recommend. And then I would reread those 4 chapters. And if you don't love to read, get the audio book, and those 4 chapters you can treat as a podcast once a month, because it's about the length of one podcast to do those 4 middle chapters. So that's some quarters, that's how I do it. I treat it more as a podcast each quarter or read it. Okay, Karen.
Okay, my third book I recommend is Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty.
Okay, I've read that.
And I recommend you listen to it on Audible because listening to his voice is amazing. It's so calming and he's just lovely to listen to.
Yep.
I love so much about this book. So when I did my webinar on overcoming your overwhelm, this was the breath part. Being purposeful about a lot of things in my life is more intuitive or seems to be more natural to me than being purposeful about my own breathing and controlling my breathing and calming myself. Where in this book really, I don't know if it's how it was written. I don't know if it was listening to him, but it really got through to me on how important that is and how powerful that is in helping everything else in your life. And so I love so much about this book. Mindfulness. I love how it's laid out in that each chapter can be independent of each one. So he has a chapter on negativity, fear, intention, breathing, being purposeful, gratitude, relationships. So if there's something that I'm needing or feeling lacking on or want to revisit, I can just jump into that chapter and listen to that chapter again. And he does meditation prompts and it's just so great.
Yep. That's all I'm going to say. Yep. Yeah. And by the way, the audiobook, yes, as well. Yep.
So good. Yep. And then I do have a bonus one. Buy Yourself the Effing Lilies by Tara Schuster is also amazing. It's her own story and her own journey to becoming a ninja at self-love. It's funny, it's real, it's hard, it's empowering.
I love
that. So that phrase. One, so good.
Ninja. So
I just had to throw that in. Yes.
Yeah. If you guys are going to do bonuses, I'm going to do a bonus. All right, Nicole.
Oh man. Well, I had a hard time picking what my third one was going to be for several reasons, but I ultimately ended on The One Thing by Gary Keller. I know this is kind of a classic. However you feel about Keller Williams, setting that aside, I don't think it's related to KW at all. It's just something that KW uses a lot. But I picked this book for a few reasons. First being that I also live in the world of novels and stories, and I love fiction. You can pry my fantasy novels out of my cold dead fingers. I love it. This is the first nonfiction book, like actual business, like personal growth book that I actually read and finished. And I think that's really powerful for me just because I found so much value in it. When I kind of started my professional journey and everything, like I have a tendency to want to kind of give 100% at 100% of the things and want to do all of the things perfectly all of the time. And that's just not feasible and not sustainable. And this book really kind of taught me that you achieve extraordinary results by narrowing your focus. And that applies to every aspect of your life. What is one thing that you can do that could actually make forward progress, towards your goals or toward whatever it is that you're trying to do. Again, it ties in really well with how to do the work, because one of the things that you learn in how to do the work is how to keep the smallest promises to yourself. Our journey towards self-healing starts with, what is the smallest promise that I can make to myself, and then keep that. What is one thing that I can do that I can promise myself I'm going to do every single day? Whether it's like, I'm going to meditate for 5 minutes, I'm going to drink a glass of water the first thing I do when I wake up, whatever it is, it's literally one thing. And it just teaches you that starting with that one small thing is actually going to magnify, and it's going to exponentially change your focus and what you're able to do through the rest of your life. So yeah, I know it's a cop out. I know a lot of people have read this book. I know a lot of people might not necessarily be a big fan of it anymore, but I still think that there's a lot of value in this, in the concept of, the 80-20 principle. 80% of our results come from 20% of our focus and what we're doing. This applies to every aspect of your business. Like, in my business, 80% of our transactions come from 20% of our clients, always. Yep. Like that, you can take that and you can apply it to literally everything. And that all goes back to this book.
Yep. Yeah. That book has been major for a lot of people. The funny thing is I didn't put that book on my list, but I almost put the one because I thought someone on here might. So I thought I'd put the counter book to that, which I didn't, which we could talk about. But there is a book that was written almost exactly 100 years prior to that book.
Ooh,
that you will swear, I've got it sitting right over here. When you read it, you'll swear it's the same book.
That's crazy.
It is almost scary. Almost scary. All right, go ahead, Chrissy.
Well, my last book is technically not a favorite book. So I was also having a hard time choosing my book recommendations. But then I realized it's book recommendations, not necessarily the top favorite books. And then when I realized that, I'm like, okay, well, what book should I share that would most likely provide more value for other people when I recommend it? And I don't love it, but I know that it has a lot of value to offer. It's Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. What I loved about that book was how he showed two different realities and how he showed how you can attain the better option. And one more thing is maybe because it's really famous, but a lot of additional materials are easily available nowadays, like worksheets about it. There are so many forums and groups that talks about the lessons that he shared in there. And just so you know, the first time I encountered that book was in my high school. It was one of our subjects, like for TLE. It's the main topic of that subject, and I hated every minute of that subject. I wanted to cry because I didn't appreciate it that time. And then eventually, when I had to be an adult in life, I had to go back to that book, and then I realized how much value it provides in terms of financial freedom and step by step how to do things in the real estate industry, which is actually a hard topic for me to understand at that time. But more and more, I go back now and then to recall it, because even though it's already on top of my mind that these are the do's and the don'ts, I really need reminders, and reading the Rich Dad Poor Dad actually helps in reminding me of the possibilities, the realities, and what's the better option and how to actually go through that better option. And I really love the communities built around the concepts that he has been sharing. So Rich Dad Poor Dad, not my favorite, but it really adds value to my life.
I'm going to agree with you that it's also not my favorite, but here's the thing is, it is one of those things that I consider for my industry a required read. And I will say what I do love about that book is it really is a good instigator for a lot of amazing conversations that need to happen. So again, it's one of those books that it's not about whether I like it or not. It's a needed book within a certain realm, and it has done a great job at creating conversations. And if you haven't read that, you're out of the conversation.
Sure.
So, okay. So my last one, I'm going to try not to cheat. I'm going to try to stick to one thing. And that is, I want to give not a book. I want to give an author, but I will give a book. I don't want to, but I will. Okay. And that is going to be, and I probably have on my desk right now, maybe around 17 of his books. Okay. It is Thich Nhat Hanh. Hardcore, Thich Nhat Hanh, Thich Nhat Hanh, Thich Nhat Hanh, Thich Nhat Hanh. So why Thich Nhat Hanh, and then what book would I recommend? What book is hard because they have over 100 Thich Nhat Hanh books. Literally. What? Okay. So the deal is that Thich Nhat Hanh is a lot of, thank you, Karen, for bringing up a bunch of topics that you did. The fact is he is the one that talks about, every year, New Year's resolutions, you hear people say, I just want to be more present. What you're talking about when you say more present is to be more mindful. It's about mindfulness. It's about your self-awareness, all those types of things. I can go read all 100 of his books, and it is a master class in being more present and being mindful and being purposeful. It is absolutely, he's one of my biggest inspirations, but he's also one of those, remember, we pick up a book and we're one version of ourselves now, we're a different version of ourselves later. He was not easy for me to read, probably for about 8 years. I liked the concepts because I was hearing the concepts from my aunt who knew about Thich Nhat Hanh. I related to my aunt. I would pick up this book. His verbiage is tough for me. This is not your standard read. So it took me a while to get used to the way he writes, his style, the way he speaks, everything. But then when it clicked for me, it was like a light bulb went off and everything made sense. And I couldn't get enough of 100 books. Okay, so the one I will recommend, which I don't want to, is I would say The Miracle of Mindfulness is one of them. The Miracle of Mindfulness. Another fun place to start, I will say, is this, and I will give this to Chrissy, and Chrissy can put this up for anybody who wants it, is, as soon as I can figure out where it is. See how tiny these little things are next to my head? Okay. These are like 1-page reads.
That's cool.
And this is one example of what it looks like to read Thich Nhat Hanh in a moment. Okay. We frequently walk through with the sole purpose of getting from one place to another, but where are we in between those two? When we talk about being present, and he even talks about doing the dishes, we do the dishes only in hopes to get through with it so we can move on to whatever else is next. We're not present even in doing the dishes. But then once we get done with the dishes, we're just doing the dishes to get done with the dishes. And then when we get to what we were thinking about, while we're there in that thing that we were thinking about, having dessert, having tea, we're already thinking about what's next after that. We're never really where we're at. And that's what he's talking about with that mindfulness and being truly present. We frequently walk with the sole purpose of getting from one place to another, but where are we in between? It's simple things like that. And there's over 100 books with those types of thought processes. I need that in my life pretty much daily. And so that little thing that's on the screen right now is just this little, and I like the books a little better, but these are a little more digestible. They give you little things like how to walk, how to sit, how to love, how to eat, how to relax. The suggestions in there are so almost stupid, not even second grade level, preschool level suggestions. That's what I need in my life on a real regular basis. So Thich Nhat Hanh is my recommendation. And I guess if you want one book that's an introduction to him, I guess Miracle of Mindfulness is a good one to start with. But I would recommend all 100. So
I'm so glad that you said that when you first started reading him, you had a hard time getting used to his writing style.
Yep.
That's
Dialect,
where I'm at
everything.
with him. Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at. So
yep.
I feel very encouraged by you sharing that comment. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's once I broke through that, oh my gosh, it's like it all changed. It was just, I can't get enough of it now at this point. So
awesome.
I'm not going to give another book recommendation, not another Thich Nhat Hanh. No, I'm not giving more book recommendations at all. Not at all. No, I wouldn't do that to you guys. I wouldn't. I could do that like 17 more times. Okay. So, so anyways, I think that is it. Jeannie, are you willing to share with us? Are you willing to unmute and share with us and speak with us?
Sorry.
Hello, my friend.
Sorry, forgive my face. I'm actually experiencing an allergic reaction, so I'm kind of shy to speak with you.
I've been asking people to excuse my face my whole life. You got nothing on me, my friend. So you and I, we've definitely had a little bit of connection on some books I know that I read and stuff like that. And you've given me some beautiful feedback on some of those. But your own books, I don't care if it's ones that you and I have already talked about or ones that are just meaningful to you. I do love that there's a common book that we have in common that you said, yeah, thanks for that. That one made me cry. Great. Basically. So I love you get passionate and emotional about what you're reading. So I do respect what you have to say. What recommendation might you have?
Well, currently I'm trying to get geeky on Malcolm Gladwell's books. So
there you go. I love someone with a pile of books. Yes.
Yeah. I think it's a good thing to read, especially for us marketing people.
Okay.
So Malcolm Gladwell is always been the author who's always been referenced to. So I was kind of really interested in knowing his books and knowing him. So I think I can recommend him now because he really writes well. He really explains everything from pieces to bits. So you'll definitely love Malcolm Gladwell.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Now, last thing I'm going to ask you, because I put you on the hot seat here. Okay, so I'm asking you another question. I know you and I have both gone through the 10 Scrolls and the 4 Agreements. Was last year the first time you had ever had experience with either one of those?
Yeah. Yes.
About a year ago, or within the last 2 years. Do you see the application of those both personally and professionally? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. But it's an everyday process that it still kind of surprised me and confused me at the same time. Yeah. So yeah.
I love that because we've gotten to know each other, and I know that both the personal side and the business side means something to you. And I wanted to point that out only because I look at some of the book recommendations that everybody's given here, and I could see these literally impacting us both personally and professionally. And I love that. I really love that and appreciate that in everybody. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to end this video and this webinar. But here's what I do want to share. I do want to share that this is going to get reposted. It will be on YouTube, but it'll also be in our membership in the webinar replays. Now, Chrissy's going to do something special with this. The fact is, what she's going to do is divide out each one of us and make their own video. So Karen, it will have just a video of just Karen and her 3 book recommendations. Just Nicole, because sometimes we just connect with one person in that moment and we just want to go back through their book recommendations. So you'll see the full video, but you'll also see each one of ours divided out. And Chris, you'll probably have those up in the next 1 to 2 weeks, I will say, rather than 1 week this week, because she's got a lot of videos to edit for this. But I want to thank everybody. Tons of love to everybody.